let's start off this episode by talking about Blake Griffin to the Brooklyn Nets. See, you know I love the Nets. I've been a Nets fan since I don't know how long, since I was young, a young boy.
But you readopted the team a couple of weeks ago.
I've always been there, man. It's always been in my heart. You can't readopt something that's always been in your heart. I was going to wear my Kyrie Irving jersey, the city jersey that's right there. But not going to lie, I gained a couple pounds. I don't like the way it fits on my body. I feel it fits kind of tight. I don't want to be taking it on and off. But
you should have worn the beard.
I should have wore the beard. But that I wear it when we talk about James Harden. Blake Griffin to the Nets. At first, I know you didn't like the move. I like the move because I think right now the Nets have no playmaker off the bench, right? You know, Dinwiddie is still injured. Who knows if he's going to come back this season? There is no real point guard off the bench. I think Blake Griffin can play that point forward type role. If the Nets are getting a motivated Blake Griffin, which I think they are going to get, this was a steal of a move. I don't know if Blake will start because a starting lineup of Kyrie, Harden, KD, Blake, and maybe Jeff Green or Joe Harris seems kind of weird. There's definitely room for it to happen. The Nets have a lot of versatility now. In terms of rim protection, this doesn't help the Nets. In terms of defense, this doesn't help the Nets. But the Nets right now are 22nd in bench points with 33.6 points per game. First place right now is Detroit. Then you have the Jazz, the Clippers, and Lakers are all top 10. The bench for the Nets is 14th in net rating. They have a 0 net rating, so they're not minus and not plus in that category, and they're 17th in assists. I think by bringing Blake off the bench, that assist number will go up, and the Nets could potentially go from the 22nd team in bench points to the first. Right now, they're scoring 33 points off the bench. Number one is Detroit with 42. Can Blake Griffin get you 9 points? Yes, he can. They can go from 22nd to first with Blake coming off the bench, but who knows if he's going to come off the bench. That has not been announced yet. I hope he does.
Yeah.
But for rim protection, I think the Nets are fine. Nick Claxton has been averaging about 1.5 blocks per game. I don't think the Nets need to get an Andre Drummond or whoever else. I think Nick Claxton.
Nice, but yes, Nick Claxton coming back has made it not a necessity like it was.
I think Claxton is good. I think he can play that role very nicely. I don't see any reason why to go out and get another guy. I think Claxton is good. I worry about Claxton when he has to go up against Joel Embiid because he's skinny in frame, and I think JaVale McGee would be better to probably help guard him. But outside of that, I think this Nets team is pretty much complete, and this is the team we're going to see for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I would say I seemed very against the move at the beginning, but I wasn't as much against the move as much as I was against the role that I think a lot of people thought that he was going to play or still think he's going to play. And when you talk about him starting, I don't think there's any chance he should be starting. If you're bringing him in as a bench role, I think it's a great move. You're not going to find probably anybody in the league. I would say you won't find many guys in the league better for the value of I believe he got the veteran minimum, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to find many better players on the vet minimum than Blake Griffin, especially if you could get him half rejuvenated. You look back in 2018, he was an all-star and very well-deserving. Since then, he's a totally different player. He hasn't dunked since 2019. Granted, late in 2019, and that number is skewed because of the way the season was affected in 2020, but still, he's not the same explosive guy. He's not a great three-point shooter as much as he's improved that shot, shooting 31% from three on 6 attempts. So, he's a viable option shooting from the three-point line, but not a guy you want taking shots away from that big three or Joe Harris or even a guy like Bruce Brown the way he's been playing. So
or Jeff Green.
Yeah, or Jeff Green when he gets back from injury. If you're telling me he's a bench player, I think it's a great move. But when people start talking about him being like either a starter or in the lineup at the end of games, I don't think that makes any sense. In my opinion, he doesn't provide anything to that starting unit. Like you said, he's a great addition to the bench. He could probably get you a solid 10 points a night with that second unit, and he will definitely make that second unit better if you can get half of what 2018 Blake was. And I think you've seen a little bit of a rejuvenation with DeAndre Jordan. I think you could get that same kind of thing out of Blake Griffin here, coming to a championship contender and just getting him to buy in a little bit more, which is, like I said, like what they've been able to do with DeAndre Jordan. But at the end of games, you want the three guys out there, and then I would rather see Joe Harris, Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, Nick Claxton all ahead of Blake Griffin in those situations, because defensively, like you said, he's not a good defender anymore. He's not a good rebounder. So he doesn't add much in the categories that you've been lacking, and offensively, you have better options.
Personally, for me, I think you're being a little bit too harsh on Blake. You know, I get it because he hasn't shown much. I'm okay with him finishing out games. I really am. If he's playing well that game, I have no problem with letting him continue to be out there and play. I'm not just going to sub him out because he's not playing. If he's playing well, I'm not going to do that. My prediction is that Blake Griffin will dunk in his first game with the Brooklyn Nets. That's my prediction. He will be in a pick-and-roll situation with James Harden, and he will get a lob, an easy lob dunk, and Blake Griffin will dunk. Do I think that he definitely doesn't have the athleticism that he once had? He's never going to get that back. He's been injured way too much. He's had a ton of knee injuries, but we see a trend of players that are older that we know they aren't what they once were, but every so often they can give you a glimpse of what they once were. And I think that'll be Blake. Maybe every other 4 or 5 games, he's going to get that 20 a night, especially with Brooklyn. He's going to really show out, and you're going to see, wow, it feels like I'm watching Los Angeles Clippers Blake Griffin. We're going to get a glimpse of that. I think right now, I wouldn't want to see Blake Griffin in spot-up shooter situations or play that role. He played it in Detroit this past season, and I mean, he was horrible in Detroit. Bad. I mean, he's tough to watch. I made a video about him, his career being over, how his career as we once knew it is over. That's for sure. Yeah. He's not Blake Griffin anymore. That's why when Bleacher Report and ESPN and all these other outlets put out graphics of Harden, KD, and Kyrie. Yes, Blake does not belong with those players. He still has that name. His cachet has that name, but he is not that player. The Nets are just getting a good bench role player. That's it. I don't think they're getting anything else. I don't think they're getting 20 points per game. I think best case scenario, they're getting an efficient 12 to 15 a night from Blake Griffin. And I think that's being generous, especially given how many players the Nets have on their team. I think that's being generous, but I think he can give you 4 to 6 assists a night, which is huge.
Yeah, and the worst case scenario is he doesn't pan out. He's just as bad as he was in Detroit, and all you signed him for was a vet min. So, I mean, like it's not like you made some huge investment here. If it really doesn't work out, you can just sit him on the end of the bench and it'll make no difference. Or you could release him. It really does not, like, it was a very low risk, medium-ish reward move, I would say. So I can't be mad at it. My response yesterday was more so in response to people who were saying it was like adding a 4th star or this is the move that puts him over the top. I don't think it's that at all. If you didn't think the Nets were the championship favorites already, I don't think there's any way Blake Griffin signing should be the move that makes you say, oh, well, cancel the season, the league's over. Like, they were already championship favorites in my eyes, so obviously they're still championship favorites now. But people that didn't think they were, I don't see how Blake Griffin changes that for you.
I made a video about it. I made a segment about it on this podcast. The segment title was literally called "The Nets Will Win the 2021 NBA Championship." This was before they got Blake Griffin. I've said it before Harden got traded to Brooklyn. If Harden gets traded to Brooklyn, they're going to win the championship. There are still some people that are in denial about it. There are still some people that think the Lakers are going to win or anybody else. Nobody is beating the Brooklyn Nets. I'll say that once. I've said that a million times already. I'll say it again. Nobody is beating the Brooklyn Nets in a 7-game series. In the East, it's not even close. The only teams that have a shot are the Lakers, if we're being realistic, and that's because they have LeBron, and we're giving them the benefit of the doubt. But realistically, no team is beating the Brooklyn Nets in a 7-game series. And I think Blake Griffin is going to surprise some people with how he plays when he joins the Nets and when they play their next game. Because I think there was a little bit of a factor that he wasn't motivated in Detroit. He didn't really want to give it his all on a team that is really bad. With the Nets, he has some motivation. This is a chance for him to win a championship. So I think everything is there for him to play his best basketball. And I think that's what it'll do.
Yeah, and the Nets are really not only starting to turn a corner, they've turned the corner. Defensively, everybody is playing better. The energy level is higher, even against bad teams, which is something they struggled with early in the season. And then when they got Harden meshing together, they struggled beating bad teams. Now they're really starting to put it together, even without Kevin Durant, which is crazy to think. You're adding probably a top 3 player in the league. He'll be back probably soon after the All-Star break. So they are going to be a very tough team to beat.
No doubt about it.
And that's without Blake Griffin. I mean, adding him is just like, like I said, very low risk.
It's adding a cherry on a sundae.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Exactly.
That's what it is.